I now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just this past week, the international community and the United Nations commemorated the International Day for the Elimination of Sexual Violence in Conflict. While the world advocated for the eradication of sexual violence as a weapon of war and terror, this is the reality of 16 Israeli women who are still being held hostage by Hamas terrorists in Gaza ever since the October 7th massacre. In all, 120 Israeli hostages are still being held captive in harsh conditions under mental, physical, and sexual abuse. One of them is Naama Levy, who turned 20 years old in captivity just 3 days ago, surrounded by terrorists and rapists for the last 262 days. Members of the Council, why is this Council not focused on addressing the dire humanitarian situation of the hostages? What does this Council have to say to Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, Elia Cohen, and Or Levy, whose brutal kidnapping video from October 7th was released yesterday? What would you say to their families who watched their children being dragged from a shelter, bloody, scarred, and hurt, being abused throughout their torturous drive into Gaza? Colleagues, Hamas's refusal to release the hostages through diplomacy proves that the efforts to bring our hostages home must also include military means. The recent IDF rescue operation that brought 4 hostages back home was an example of how this can be achieved. Israel stands firm on our principles, and they have not changed. We will continue until the last remaining hostage is returned, and we will not stop until Hamas's military and governing capabilities are dismantled. We are committed to the Israeli proposal, which President Biden has welcomed. Our position has not changed. These have been our goals from day one. As for the humanitarian situation in Gaza, since the beginning of the war, more than 36,000 aid trucks have been brought into Gaza. This is over 682,000 tons of humanitarian aid, which has included food, water, shelter equipment, medical supplies, fuel, gas, and more. The problem was and remains in the collection and distribution of this aid by the United Nations. Nearly all United Nations requests for the coordination of humanitarian convoys have been and are being approved, and the daily pauses in operations against terrorists continue to enable the distribution of aid. Yet Hamas continues to attack aid convoys, serving their dual objectives of stealing food and supplies for terrorist combatants while disrupting the delivery of aid. On June 14th, Hamas fired 5 projectiles towards Israel from a humanitarian aid area in central Gaza. 2 of them crossed into Israeli territory and 3 fell within Gaza. Where was the Council's outrage at this? Mr. President, Hamas is entirely to blame for this conflict. They launched an unprovoked, brutal invasion into Israel, a sovereign country, murdered innocent civilians and took hundreds of hostages. They are still holding our loved ones in Gaza while continuing their attacks on Israel. They use Gazans as human shields while pursuing the genocidal aims. Alongside this, more and more weapons of the Hamas terrorists continue to be discovered inside UN facilities, universities, civilian homes, mosques, and other civilian sites. It is imperative that this Council finally holds Hamas accountable, assigns the blame where it belongs, and unequivocally condemns terror and its sponsors. As a Security Council, it is your responsibility to exert relentless pressure on terrorists, whether Hamas in Gaza or Hezbollah in Lebanon. Over the past months, Hezbollah has increased its attacks on Israel, firing thousands of rockets, suicide drones, and missiles from Lebanon towards Israel on a daily basis. Israel will not allow the Hezbollah terror organization to continue attacking its territory and citizens. In an all-out war, Hezbollah, which has been violating Security Council resolutions for years, endangering both the Israeli and Lebanese people, as well as UN peacekeepers, will pay the price. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks for watching. Drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Until next time, stay informed and inspired. This is Dejobnik signing off.